Hey folks, this is me, Vishwas, and I'm the host of this webinar. A lot of times, Apache Airflow has been one of the most critical component in any of the fields combined together. Let it be a regular software kind of a deployment, as well as it has a huge impact in MLOps as well. So today I'm with Sanchit Jain, who's going to give you that comprehensive view about what an Apache Airflow can bring as an impact in your production. Let's get it started right now, folks. So, Sanjit, it's there with you right now.
Thanks, Vishwas. Thank you so much for inviting me. Hello, folks. Good morning. I hope everyone is doing good and great. Happy Friday. We are sitting almost close to weekend, so I'm just expecting you guys are not daydreaming about your weekend's plan. And I won't bore you. I'll try to make sure that this is really fun and you guys enjoy. And as I think Vishwas gave a very good brief introduction about how exactly the airflow or what exactly airflow. No worries, I'll try. Even if you guys have not heard about Airflow, very new to this world, or you're very expert to the world, I've tried to balance my session for both the kinds of the people. So just stay with us, fasten your seatbelt, and this is going to be something very great for you to learn. Vishwas, can you just get my screen enabled so we can directly jump? Yeah,
Sure,
awesome.
sure.
Thank you. Thank you. So we will talk about Amazon Managed Workflow for Apache Airflow. Now, it's a very big term. What exactly means by Amazon Managed Workflow for Apache? No worries. I will try to get into more like a story form. How exactly is this? How is that? We'll go into that phases. So let me directly jump into the introduction part and not bore you what exactly we're going to cover. So from an agenda standpoint, we will be focusing about what exactly or why do you need an Apache Airflow, overview of it, the architectures, components, the best practices, how exactly the manage Amazon managed workflow for Apache Airflow looks like. Those are the other things, and a wonderful demo which help you to get started. Don't worry, don't panic. This entire presentation, along with the code which I will leverage for this demo, I will package everything and share it with Vishwas. So just focus on this. Don't try to rush to try to demonstrate or replicate the demo with me on live. I have been practicing that from a while, so I'll do it faster, but don't worry about it. Just focus on it. And again, don't worry if you have any questions in the chat. You can put it in the LinkedIn comment. I will try my best after the session. I can reply, or I'm also tagged into the LinkedIn. My entire LinkedIn profile is there. So put it in the. I mean, just join, connect with me, and ask me in the messenger. I'll be very happy to talk about or share my knowledge, not just limited to Airflow, anything which is around data analytics, DevOps, or AWS. So do stay connected for the session. From an introduction standpoint, I think my name is Sanchit Jain, which everyone know for so far now. I work as a data analytics and a cloud practice lead for AWS business at Quantiphi. From a recognition standpoint, I am an AWS Hero. It's an allied group of people who are very expert, love to share their knowledge with community and pride about it. As well as I'm an AWS Ambassador. I've received multiple recognitions from other external communities like Multi-Cloud for You and other stuff. As well as I'm an co-organizer for AWS User Group Mumbai. I've given different talks where you talk about AWS reInvent. Last year in 2022, I gave a talk at AWS reInvent. I have given AWS talk at AWS Summit, AWS user groups, community days, and various other colleges. And as I said, you can reach out to me any of the channels, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, GitHub. Outside WhatsApp, there are other forms where you can reach out to me. So please do stay connected with me. And if you have any questions about your career, AWS, certification, DevOps, analytics, just message me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'll be happy to help. So I'll jump to the session. And before we start getting into what is Airflow and all, it's very important why you need it, right? So if you understand why behind anything, then you can easily replicate that. So first is why exactly Apache Airflow. So Apache Airflow, basically, if I go back in the past, let's say if I go back, rewind the time 5 years or 10 years before, there were orchestration, right? Orchestration is nothing but, in a very simple term, sequence of activities, right? Activities which you do one after the another is called as an orchestration. And then you have a wrapper or a package which just takes this step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 and create a package of it, like a flow chart. We all know what exactly is a flowchart, right? That's the basic thing what we learn when we start any programming language, or when we start like in our engineering or anything, how to design the programs and all. And that's exactly the thing start. Now the differentiator, what exactly was the Airflow here was, if I go back and talk about the different tools, many people would have understand about the cron job, right? There are other kinds of orchestration. We talk about Uzi is there and other thing, right? Now there are certain limitations in each of this orchestration layers. On a high level, I've not tried to deep dive into each of them, but I've summarized it what is my observation with each of this kinds of cron and similar kind of an option. The first thing which I have personally also have understand is with the cron, it's a very good tool to start, right? If you are a fresher or a beginner, it is very good to explore cron and do some scheduling work, right? If you want to do some small activities like you want to back up or clean your instance or those kinds of stuff, it is very good. But let's say if you want to do a heavy lifting, a complex data pipeline, or 10-15 sequence of activities, then cron is not the right thing. The reason is why it's a poor at job task handling. Things like, if you want to, first of all, you not cron is nothing but just like a alarm, right? So at the behind the scene, you have to write the code. So it's not that, okay, you can do some intelligent kind of thing that step one will generate this output, that output will get validated, then you can, based on that output, you trigger the second job. It does not have that kind of intelligence. Second, from a retry perspective, it's very poor. You all have to do in your code. Cron as an functionality, it does not provide anything, right? It's not intelligent, so it does not provide the retry, the backfields, as well as the limited idea about the task, right? One of the biggest thing which I have always faced when I have leveraged cron is, I really don't know whether the things executed or not from the cron standpoint. Obviously, some people might disagree that, okay, I have written a code which can send an email if it is successful or not. Yes, that's all what you can do if you explicitly write the code in your script to send some notification via some AWS services or an email. But cron as a base does not provide that functionality. And that becomes more difficult when things failed, right? When something goes wrong, something breaks, you have no idea. You have to really go back to that instance machine where you have scheduled the cron, open all the logs, troubleshoot, and get into it, which becomes very difficult in that firefighting situation. So that is my personal experience. I've dealt a lot of such kinds of scenarios where I really felt that, why I need something which is very good, right? Why I have to deal with this? So that's what is the big thing about it. And that was the cron and other stuff, right? If I move towards more industry I would say specific or some more sophisticated thing, like we talk about, there are other proprietary paid license orchestration things are available. Uzi is another one which is available. Now the problem in such kinds of stuff is, if I see the other open source sophisticated thing is, they are either good to do one programming language, right? Now if you talk about Uzi, it is very good. I've used it. I mean, it's way better than cron. But the problem with Uzi was like, okay, it's meant for one kind of an application. Now as our entire application complexity have increased in industries, you don't do one thing in the pipeline, right? One maybe the Python job, the second maybe the Java, third maybe let's say .NET, fourth maybe some you're doing, let's say, data processing, fifth maybe machine learning. So not only the type of application have changed in terms of variety, but even the programming language, where Uzi is very restrict in terms of doing one programming pipeline, right? That was a problem. And if I talk about the other sophisticated proprietary orchestration tools, it's very expensive. It's damn expensive. So how exactly we can find the best of everything, which gives us this following answers, right? The question to this following answer: do you know when your cron job failed? Your spot when your task 3x lower, can visualize what's running or not, or what is in the queue, where exactly it's standing, you can reuse and all. So that's exactly where you see the central of all the best thing has come up in Airflow. Not only it's open source, not only it has an UI, not only it has a way to manage the logs, not only it provides different DAGs, which we will all see all of this detailed in the demo, that reusable kind of capability. And it also provides a simple, elegant way to track what's happening, what failed, how it failed, retry, and all of the stuff without creating much complexity in your business code. So that's exactly the problem what you see when it comes to the cron and other stuff. Now, moving towards the next option, what exactly is an overflow? So far, I'm very sure you guys would have at least understood why exactly you need an Apache Airflow or what Airflow is good for. Apache Airflow, as the name suggests, it's an open source. So you're not paying any sorts of license cost and all. There are many other companies, or I would say vendors, what they have done is they took this open source Airflow and they have to try to define their own manage and provide something called as a manage, which is done by the cloud as well as some other vendors in the market, which you will see why they are doing it and what is the reason in this upcoming session. But before we go to that, let me try to cover up the basics for the people who are hearing Apache Airflow for the very first time. They're at the ground zero. They just know why you need Airflow. Now let's understand what exactly Airflow. So if you correlate from our previous slide, this is the same point where you will see more or less Apache Airflow as an introduction will cover up all the points what we saw as a drawback of these tools. So the starting, let's say from the clockwise direction, if we go, a platform to monitor and control data pipelines. So if you saw previously, there was no UI, nothing. There's no there were processes available to check and validate, but it's very clumsy. So here you can see it's very easy platform provided. Second, 100% code is developed in Python. So if it is in programming language and developed in Python, that means you can try to reuse it. It's all about DAG, directed acyclic graph, right? Which is more like a workflow. So you can easily design that and reuse that workflow, not only within Airflow, but multiple different instances of Airflow. So if you go a bit towards DevOps side of the things, you have this dev, UAT, and prod kind of thing, right? Development environment, user acceptance environments, and the production. So you can leverage this DAG like just as your code as a part of your CI/CD pipeline. Easily define your own operator, executor, and extend the library. Obviously, it's an open source, so you have the luxury to nail it, bend it, white label it however you want. Pipelines are configured as code, allowing for dynamic pipeline generation. So as I mentioned, since it is written in Python and it's all about DAG, which is like your pipeline as a code in a simple layman language. It's allow you to generate that code, the pipeline as a code dynamically, and it makes it more reusable as well as modularized. So this is the advantages of the Airflow, or what exactly is Airflow, which we saw was very difficult when we talk about the other proprietary orchestration layer or the open source like cron and all, which becomes very difficult. So that's exactly the Airflow stands. Now you might be thinking, okay, fine, but why do I need an Airflow? So why exactly I do need Airflow itself, right? There could be something else. So first thing is, if let's say you are a part of an organization, or if your needs are something where you need to have several critical processes to be maintained and monitored. So let's say things like you're doing some data processing for your machine learning models, or you're building any data lake or modern data platform. It's very important that you have build that pipeline, right? A proper pipeline which is not complex but help you to solve your business requirement. Think of such a way, you're building like a data analysis kind of a platform where you load the entire data from last 24 hours. You're building this for a retail shop, or let's say for a hotel. Now you want to understand what was your performance, how was the hotel revenue was yesterday, so you can see if any change is required today. Now in such kinds of scenario, it is very important whatever the hotel performed, I mean whatever the people or your guests were last 24 hours, you want to take the entire data, the total billing data, the order inventory data, as well as the other number of guests, right? All this data you want to take that at the end of the day, which maybe let's say 12 a.m. or maybe let's say 2 a.m. based on how you operate. Take that data, process it, and be ready maybe 7 a.m. in the morning. So you only have 5 hours to do it, which is a very critical and time sensitive way to handle that stuff. So that becomes more important around it. The second is different kinds of tool, right? When you have different kinds of tools, as I was talking about, that there are certain tools which are very good to do it, But when it comes to different kinds of job, right? Like some are Python, some are in Java, some are in Scala, or some are maybe in some other languages. How we can try to build one pipeline which try to fits into all the buckets, as well as some sort of an intelligence from one step to another. Now, many a times I see pipelines are designed as a constraint. They are designed like a very dumb way, better lack of dumb way in the senses. You expect that your process will always be executed successfully. So you don't put a validation job. Step one, there is no validation, directly step two. But in Airflow, you can also have some sort of a validation between step one and step two. So you can fail the pipeline if something goes wrong at the early stage, rather than just getting everything done at the end. And then finally, at the end, you identify my entire pipeline was wrong, so I have to re-execute. Those kinds of intelligent way also you can do. Notification, obviously, I mean, that is constant. You can also get notifications and the stuff, and actions must be taken in case of things goes wrong, which I already talk about why exactly or what you can do. There are a couple of more things from a developer standpoint, right? So these are good if you talk about from a business perspective for the audience who are more comes from an architect background or more from a business background. But as a developer also, not only Airflow is very good, but Airflow also provides REST APIs. It can also integrate with your existing CI/CD pipeline. So when it provides APIs, existing CI/CD pipeline, open source, it can fit or integrate very well in your existing system, which is a very good thing. It's not easily available when you switch from one platform to another. Not all the platform provides that capability, but Airflow does it very elegant way. So that's how, from a developer standpoint, it makes your life more easy when, let's say, you're moving from some other platform to this one. So it's not only help you to simplify your entire operational overhead, but also fit in your existing system, whatever you're doing, right? Whether you are doing heavy complex DevOps pipeline, MLOps, or you have your own custom custom proprietary software, APIs, REST APIs, every system supports. And Airflow also provides REST API to orchestrate the pipeline, to get the status, to make some changes, to define the variables parameters, which makes it much more easy, integrable, or I would say user friendly. Let's talk about Airflow is very flexible. I think you would have understood by now from the last slide itself. Easily extensible, efficient CLI, DAGs are made in code, backfill control, rich UI, and communication between tasks, right? So as I talk about, which you will see all those when we're doing the demonstration, that extensible means you can play around or you can plug Airflow in any of your pipelines, any of your applications, ETL via REST APIs, via command line interface, or you can use it. Also provides pipeline as a code. So not only you can reuse, reshare across your different teams in the organization, but across different environments of your development cycle. A user interface is very good, which we'll see in the demo, and the communication between the tasks is good, which is done by an celery or orchestrator, which will deep dive in the architecture slide. But the communication wise also, it use one of the best orchestrator scheduler behind the scene on the road. Now, how does the Amazon managed workflow works, right? So far I am pretty sure you guys would have understand what exactly the Airflow is, or why do we need an Airflow. But now exactly, let's try to switch our gear towards the cloud offered managed workflow. So it's a name suggests Amazon managed workflows for Apache Airflow. So behind the scene, what AWS has done is they took this open source Apache Airflow and packaged and create their own version, I would say, of managed workflow. And why they have done it or what's an intent, that also we'll try to deep dive in this section. So AWS try to provide the managed Airflow, which makes it easy for a data engineers, not only for data engineers, I would say, which makes it easy for any kind of audience who want to work on Apache Airflow. And they released this service on 2020. Recently, they have also announced Apache Airflow 2.0, which is as per the a year and a half back. And this is how the UI and other thing look like, which you will see in demo and other thing. So as I was talking about at the beginning also, that there are many kind of audience which I've seen are leveraging the open source Airflow. Many other players in the market have tried to, since it is an open source, they took this open source and tried to lightweight it further for the consumption. there are a couple cloud vendors, there are a couple other vendors who have tried to take this and try to define their own thing and provide more additional functionalities, connectors on top of it. Now, let's exactly understand why do you need, or what exactly Amazon has done behind the scene, why, which is what I love about the best. Obviously, when you talk about open source software, it's one of the best thing what you can do or what you can get, because you don't have to pay the license standpoint and all. But obviously, if you try to now double, I mean, if you try to get or detail it, right? If you go to granular view, whenever you talk about, and I'm just giving the perspective from a production standpoint, or you're running from a industry's perspective, when you try to set up any sort of a software, there is some sort of an operational overhead what you have to do. Operational overhead, and means the software will be running in a server, so you have to patch the server, back up that server, create the logs, ensure you have proper kind of security. The server should scale. Think of like this application of Airflow is going to use by 25,000 of your developers in your organization, for an example. There are many organizations which use that, right? Not even 25, I would say. I've seen 50,000, 60,000 also. So think of what kind of scale it might need in terms of everything: the infrastructure, the application availability, the management of the users, the networking securities, and other things. Do you really feel the software is very wow? You can do everything with that free of cost, but there is a big overhead of operationalizing it, maintaining that software, patching security, and all. That's exactly what AWS or the other cloud vendor have done. Is they've tried to again remove this complexity of operationalizing this software. So not only getting the best of Apache Airflow, but even reducing or minimizing to the negligible amount of operational overhead, and get that in a form of the managed. So you don't have to do anything, you just have to play around with that, and you have to just play around with this stuff. I mean, the manage workflow, write your code, work on the pipeline, and focus what do you need from the pipeline, rather than really worrying about the airflow and all. So what I will do, right, I'll take a pause here from the presentation, and I will switch to the AWS console. So this is,
Sure.
yeah,
You just switch the tab, right?
yes.
Ah, got it, got it. I thought you were stopping the share screen and you are going again. Sure, can continue.
Cool. So now what I'll do is, right, I will try to, I think I'm pretty sure everyone on this call would be aware about the AWS console. If not, then this is how the AWS console look like. What I'll try to do is, I'll try to launch a CloudFormation stack. And in this CloudFormation stack, we will be, what we will be doing is we will be deploying an Apache Airflow instance, right, as a managed service. This CloudFormation generally takes like a 20 minutes. So that is why I will try to deploy this Apache Airflow upfront, right? So give me 1 second. Let me get the code. And again, don't worry about all of these things, because we already have this code with me. So I'll share this code after the demo itself. I'll share the GitHub link itself. So give me 1 second. I think I have to download this out. Give me 1 minute. So what I'm currently doing behind the scenes are I'm just getting my CloudFormation template from the GitHub repository. Okay, cool. So what we'll do is I've just downloaded the GitHub repository, and here is my Airflow deployment instance, which I will show you what exactly I'm doing here. So this is exactly for the folks who are very new what I'm trying to do. I'll just give a quick 1 minute description. AWS Cloud Formation is also called as infrastructure as a code, which allows you to, I mean, whatever we studied, right? DAG, pipeline as a code. Here, whatever the infrastructure, what I want to deploy, infrastructure is nothing but any sorts of resources, like Airflow you talk about, the permissions, S3 bucket, security groups, any resources which I want to deploy, you can automate that deployment so you don't have to do again and again. So that's again the beauty of leveraging the cloud, right? Or Airflow in the cloud. That not only you are automating the pipeline, but you also automate the deployment of the Airflow. So if something goes wrong, let's say your Airflow instance crash, even after on the cloud it get crashed, you don't have to go back to the basics to deploy. You can leverage this cloud formation stack, and just in half an hour you will have everything back again. So that's again the magic of the cloud, or blending the user friendliness of the cloud with the leveraging the Airflow. So this I'll show you the template itself. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to launch a VPC, the entire networking, and then we are trying to deploy an Airflow instance with an S3 bucket. So we need an S3 bucket for storing all of our code and then the entire managed workflow, right? Which needs a permission, the security group, and all other stuff. In a very simple language, right? If I talk about very layman, what AWS also does is they launch like an EC2 only, a managed EC2. But in that managed EC2, they give you everything, whatever is required for your Airflow. Like not only just they set up the Airflow, they patch the Airflow with the latest version, they provide all the securities, they provide all the single sign-on and all other stuff which is required in that managed thing. So that is why it takes time. Approximately, I've benchmarked it takes like 20 to 25 minutes for this entire deployment of the instance is done. And again, you might feel that okay, 25 minutes is what I have to spend. Yes, this is only one time when you're spending when you're deploying the Airflow instance, not for the every pipeline execution. The pipeline execution is just like a minute or two, but this is what you have to spend when you're deploying the Airflow for the first time, right? So let this run. You can see the from an event standpoint, it will deploy all the S3 buckets and other stuff. This approximately will take 20 minutes. So let this run. We will go back to our entire theory part of it, the presentation, and we'll continue the same. So we were here. Now, if I go back around talking about how exactly AWS has tried to simplify the operationalizing of the platform. So when it comes to the operationalizing of the platform, right, what they have done is there are four things which comes into any sorts of operationalizing thing. I mean, there are many more, but four on the high level. One is the deployment. Second is the availability/scaling, availability and slicing, right? Third is the scaling, and fourth is the security. Deployment operational, I think I just demonstrated to you at the perfect timing how you can easily deploy it with help of the cloud formation. Like with help of the cloud formation itself, how exactly you can do all of that thing. Second is the availability. Now, availability wise also, I will demonstrate to you in the architecture in the next slide, like how exactly it helps you from an availability standpoint. So behind the scene, in a very simple language, it uses Docker. Now, there are many people who may not be used to of term called as AWS, Fargate, ECS, right? If you know, good. So for the folks who are very much used to of AWS, behind the scene, AWS has packaged this in Amazon ECS Fargate. But the folks who are using it, I mean, hearing AWS for the first time, think of it's a Docker, serverless Docker. What that means, it will only come into the execution when you need this Docker. And when it is idle, it will just go away. So it's not running 24/7. From a cost standpoint, also, it helps you. So it's a serverless Docker in which they have deployed this entire Fargate. From a scaling standpoint, as I mentioned, it's serverless Docker. So we all know Docker scales horizontally. On top of it, they have got a very good executor, which is Celery. Celery is one of the best executor what you have. So Celery is just orchestrating all of this worker node. So as I was talking about the scale, right? Let's think of you have 15,000, 20,000 of developer building the pipeline on that scale. Celery is the one who schedules all of the pipeline based on the all the worker nodes available. And at the last, you have this entire security. Security is the IAM roles and VPC. So you don't have to define your own security. You can take the advantage of the security provided by AWS itself out of the box. Not in terms of networking, in terms of the permissions to access the resources, the roles, regulations, authorization like sign in, sign out, all those kinds of beauty things have been done by AWS out of the box. That's how. Now, if I think this all AWS provides you out of the box, so then what is left for you as an user? Just write the DAG, define your pipeline, and start working on the pipeline. So that's the magic of this entire managed workflow for Apache Airflow. There is a one question in the chat. I would for sure highlight it. Can we use Terraform for deployment? Obviously, you can use Terraform. There is no restriction that you need to use CloudFormation. Think of infrastructure as a code is agnostic. So not only Terraform, you can also use CDK. So anyone who has been on from AWS, like the cloud development kit, you can also use CDK for deploying the managed workflow instance. So it's not just the CloudFormation. I'm pretty good with CloudFormation, so I leverage CloudFormation, but you can also use Terraform CDK for deploying of that. Or not only that, you can also write a Python script. Let's say if you don't know any of this and you want to use Python for an example, you can also deploy with Python Boto 3. So there is no restriction in terms of the deployment. So if you have any, I'll take a small break. If you have any other questions on the chat before we go next and deep dive, please put it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer.
Sure. I think if there are any other questions, please do drop it down in the comment section, folks. So we'll be happy to take the questions. So yes, I think there's a pause of 30 seconds. So that's the whole point about the lag, which just makes the difference here.
Right. Correct. No, if there are any questions, because I don't want to go in a very fast mode.
No,
That
I
people
think it was very much in a flow. So I was able to make that understanding. So okay, thanks, Sanchit. Okay, now he got the question answered. Wait. I think folks will keep asking the questions. I think
Sure.
till the end of the stream, don't worry. We can have a QA at the end of the
Okay.
session.
No worries, that's fine. So yeah, as Vishwas also mentioned, please put your questions in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them. Moving towards the next, how exactly I was talking about, right? I've talked about different services here and there all over the place. AWS does this, AWS does that. Let me give you the architecture that behind the scene when we talk about the managed workflow, what AWS is doing heavy lifting for us. So I've written a very simple cloud formation. It's not more than 1,000 lines. But behind the scene, AWS has done all of the security. And the reason of giving this architecture, I would say this architecture is not at all very important, but I've given this architecture for us to understand. Think of if you're trying to deploy this open source Apache software, instead of using this managed workflow provided by AWS or any other players in the market, what kind of heavy lifting or the operational thing you have to do as a DevOps or as an organization. So what you have to do, not only you have to deploy all of the schedulers, the workers, the securities, even the databases and all, to keep a track, like the logs of everything. So you can have the log presented on the screen. So those kinds of heavy lifting you have to do not one time, every time, right? Because you not only have to scale it up, manage it, patch it. Those are the different kinds of overhead which you can see. Where what AWS has tried to simplify it in a very cost effective way, which is the best thing is, on a high level, they have tried to put all of the scheduler, right, which we understood scheduler was Celery one, in a Fargate, which is a serverless Docker. Similarly, the second component is the worker. Worker is nothing but the machines or the EC2s or the Docker containers where your pipeline actions will be performed, right? Whatever we say, for example, download a file from an S3 bucket, or you write open an CSV file and write. Any action which needs to be performed will be performed in this worker node. It's the same master slave kind of a concept. Then I will move towards on the right side. There is a DB proxy and the database. So it's more like, think of very simple, you think about the APIs, which is going to constantly write into the database anything which is happening, such as, hey, there is a new pipeline. Hey, there is a pipeline which just got executed. Hey, there is a job which got states, right? It's going to log all sorts of metadata about what's happening in the Airflow. This is that entire UI, right? The Apache Airflow, the rich UI, what we were talking about. So these are the major, I would say, the broad components which is required. Now, on top of it, AWS has also given the security in terms of the endpoints. Like VPC endpoints ensure the network is private to private. It's not private to public to private, or it's private to private. It also provides the additional kinds of integrations with other services like S3, SQS, ECR, key management service, or even the CloudWatch for the log monitoring. So that's how AWS has tried to package this and given us this UI, which makes it very easy for us as an end user, that you just write your code via this UI. I mean, just upload your code, provide the details, play around with it, and you get everything out of the box. You don't have to configure any of these things. AWS will come up everything. You just have to deploy the instance of managed workflow, Apache Airflow, and that's all. AWS behind the scene will be launching all of this. That's why what I was saying, right? It takes 20 minutes. 20 minutes is this activity to deploy all of this setup, as well as deploy UI and make it readily available for you that you can go and play around of it. So that is what is all about under the hood, how exactly the managed workflow for AWS works. Now, as I mentioned in the previous slide, right, on a high level, there are four components: scheduler, web server, worker, metadata database. There are two sides of the things. Many people think it as three. Many people even think as four. Generally, I prefer on four because what they try to do is they try to scheduler and worker, they try to mix together. Some try to have it different, but that's fine. I mean, irrespective whether it's three or four, it's very important that we understand each of this thing, right? So scheduler, web server, worker, and metadata. We saw in this architecture also. Scheduler is more kind of like a balancer, right? Schedule, control plane, or the master. Very simple, very different synonyms you can think of, which is responsible for ensuring everything is working fine. How many worker nodes are free? On which worker node I can schedule? Is everything going good? Managing the heartbeats and all other stuff, right? So that's a job of the scheduler, which also interact with the queuing system. Then comes the web server. Web server, in a simple, is the place where you have this rich UI working, right? Your entire UI is hosted, which is connecting via the APIs and all other stuff, and developed in Python, which we saw in the introduction slide also. Then comes the worker. Think of worker as like a slave node where you have this entire execution of the processes are done, right? Anything what you want to do, which I said, as simple as you want to get the pipe, you want to just download a file, or you want to run any machine learning, right? So there are processes, right? There's a pipeline, the entire package or the pipeline. Within that pipeline, you have that one step, one unit of work. That one unit of work is executed on this worker. And then there is a metadata database where you log all sorts of activities, what's happening in the databases. And this entire thing has the entire horizontal row, which is the log monitoring for the execution tracking, error handling, and those kinds of stuff. Now, this is the stuff, right? I think we already covered up this. You saw in the demo itself when I was doing the cloud formation deployment. It not only gave us this features, right, of scaling, cost effective and all, but from a DevOps standpoint also, which is very important nowadays, from a speed, agility standpoint, how exactly managed workflow provides different options for deployment and operational. I think there was someone who already asked the question also, can I use Terraform for the deployment and all? So let's understand that's exactly what exactly AWS provides here. So point one is easy to set up multiple small environments. So one option is either you can have one big large server which you just share across all your teams, or you do small deployments. As I said, it's more like an EC2 instance. So however, you have the VM server, right? Whether the VM server has to be 4 GB node, whether it has to be 8 GB node, that all depends on your business requirement or your development team requirement. So it provides not only the small instance, it provides the big instance also. So it's on your flexibility and the business requirement. Second is, as I said, prod and dev environments. So not only you can logically separate it, but you can deploy the same You can have the multiple instance, smaller instance across environments, across team, or across application. That's all you can. Everything is all possible, and each instance will have a different URL to access, and the user management will also be different. So it need not to be necessary. Let's say if an as an user, I have the permission to play around with the dev environment, that doesn't mean I will have the permission to play with the production Airflow, because each will be completely different than the other. From a CloudWatch perspective, I mean, the log monitoring, you have the logging, metrics, dashboards, right? Something like this, which is not, I would say, something with respect to Airflow. It is about AWS, that any AWS services, what you leverage, whether it's simple as S3, SNS, SQS, you can get all such kinds of details, what's happening and all. So that's not specific to Airflow, I would say, but an AWS feature, what they have provided in terms of understanding what's happening from a DevOps standpoint or a system operational standpoint. And the important point, which I just answered, that you can use CloudFormation, Terraform to not only deploy this entire Airflow instance, but you can also configure the users, you can manage the IAM permissions, and as well as you can access the Airflow configuration without the UI, which if you correlate back, if we move backward, we talk about the REST APIs, right? There are CLIs, there are REST APIs in the Airflow X flexible slide. So those all things possible, which makes it very easy in terms of operationalizing it, deploying the Airflow instance, as well as integrating the Airflow not only in the open source, but even the AWS managed in your existing environment. Now let's exactly understand some sort of a small arithmetic thing, right? What is the scale or what is the environment size you need? The common question, okay, we understand it provide the small, it provide big, it provide all the things what you mentioned. But what is exact the size my organization might need or I might need individually? So when you talk about the Airflow, right? Basically, how exactly you can, how this AWS behind the scene handles it. So as I said, this is like a Fargate. So AWS does the scaling part of it. You have to define the numbers, what the maximum pool could be. Is of 2 instance, 5 instance, 10 instance. Let's say we define 10, that it can go up to 10 as max. Now it's not going to go 10 every time, right? There is a formula of what it is going to do. So that's where exactly this formula looks like, how exactly it will spin up or spin down the containers, the Fargate containers. So the first one is the spinning up. So what it's going to do is task running plus task queued divided by task per container is number of containers required. What that means is, let's say for example, you have 5 tasks which are currently under execution. There are 10 tasks which are already in the queue, and you can only have one task running in per container using the very small size of it. Then in that case, the answer is very simple. The task running are 5, the task queue are 10, so total it 15, and you are running only task per container is 1. So that the number of containers what you required is 15. As simple as that. Let's say, let's change that the task you can execute per container is 3. Then you have 5 running, 10 in the queue, divide by 3 what you can run. So you need 5 container nodes. So the container nodes here will be 5. So 5 different container nodes, which is a Amazon Fargate instance, will be spin up by AWS. I think it's very simple to understand on that front, right? Why it is more important for you to understand this is, whenever you're working in a highly large team or very business sensitive application, it's really important that you scale the maximum number of worker count. This is in your hand. Let's say if you make a mistake to only give 2, and you know there are 50 people who are going to use this at the time, you will see a blockage, and then you will say AWS is not scaling this Airflow. It's not AWS, it's you, because you have given this wrong number. So that's why this formula becomes very important for you to understand while giving this number. So that's more important when it comes to how many number of worker nodes you will require at any given time. Let's understand how exactly AWS will downsize the worker node after the task has been done, which is as simple as the number of tasks running plus number of tasks queued. If there are 0 tasks running, there are 0 in the queue, the answer has to be 0. Nothing should be running. If there is one task which is running, 0 in the queue, that means only one should be running. So downsize, it's very easy to manage. But when it comes to the minimum number of instances should be running at a given time, is very important to handle and keep an eye on that front. Because that's how you will define how exactly your Airflow should scale up and scale down at any given time. So what I will do is I'll move towards the next one, which is more around when it comes to the security part of it. So when it comes to the security, as I talk about that AWS, so far we understood about what features it provide, how it simplify the deployment and other thing. Now we will also talk about the security. Nowadays, if I really talk about in 2022, 2023 so far, security is the prime concern. Even if you want to, if you run a slow a bit in your entire deployment of the product or any solution, it's fine. Security is the right, I mean, you should have the right security posture right from day zero, I would say, not even day one. Day zero, you should have the right security posture, because if you mess up with that security posture, you will not realize it on day one or day two. You will realize it when your system get hacked, and then there is no moving backward from it. That's the only place where you cannot move backward. You're done. You have to just fix it or break it, or you just have to redesign your security posture, and that will be much more complex rather than taking, I know security, many people think it as a headache or operational overhead, but it's more important to take that overhead right from day zero in a small pinch rather than taking that larger hit. And understanding that same pain, AWS provides 4 different options which I talk about. Authentication standpoint, you can use IAM role and federation. So as I mean, we'll try to single sign on once the demo will be up and running. I'll show you how exactly you can log into UI. But as I was talking about, if you have 2 instances of Airflow running for dev and prod, that does not mean if I have an access to dev, I will also have a prod. Unless I've been given the permission, then that's a different story. So those kinds of isolation or segregation across environment is also possible. Not only across team, but across environment you can do. So that's the best thing about the authentication. The second is the VPC and security. Give me 1 minute. From the VPC and security standpoint is also very important. Why is because a VPC and security groups will ensure 2 things. One, the data or anything getting processed, right? You're writing an Airflow for doing some actions. That actions needs to be securely processed, right? Most of the times I've seen people using Airflow for either data processing, machine learning. Those are the two big on a high level, I would say, the application of using Airflow. Now think of the data what you're processing. It's a production data, right? It might use some sort of a sensitive information, some your business data. Do you, I mean, however you make it secure, but do you want that someone can easily access that data? No, obviously not. So that becomes very important from a networking layer standpoint, that you also secure not only from the user accessibility standpoint, but also from the networking layer standpoint, you secure the entire Airflow. And that's where you see the VPC as well as the security group from the networking layer standpoint. The third thing is the secret manager. Secret manager is nothing but like a credential store, a managed credential store which AWS offered. Now, why someone will say, why exactly you need a secret manager here? So secret manager is very important when you want to integrate with maybe, let's say, some other APIs. So you need an API token for it. Maybe you are integrating with some databases. So you need the credentials, username and password. I don't think anyone would really love to hardcode your username and password in the pipeline code, right? Again, there are 2 things of also I'll explain why you should not, but no one will do that because you're storing that pipeline as a code in the GitHub. So you're exposing your username password to the entire world, I mean, in your organization. That's one. Two, as well as this pipeline code will be moved across different environments like dev, UAT, prod. So your password will also be different. So you not only need some customization of flexibility, but also secure. The security manager, you can directly integrate as a placeholder, and at the runtime, Airflow can help you, or your pipeline can help to fetch that on the runtime. So you don't have to worry about the credentials across environments, and also makes it very easy In terms of if even the password get changed, you don't have to update your DAG, the pipeline as a code. You can update the secret manager. And the last point, very important, IAM execution role, which is important is, let's say if someone writes a faulty DAG, right? Someone intentionally try to hack your Apache Airflow instance, which is someone within your organization. Now, ideally, we protect in the first 3 points, we protect everything from the outsider. But what about the insider? Insider want to access some data from production and want to do some malicious activity. In that case, you can also define the IAM execution role and make it more restrictive and assign that to your Airflow instance. Things such as you cannot query this particular databases even from the Airflow, or let's say you cannot delete this resources from the Airflow. Those kinds of examples or those kinds of scenarios also you can do with help of IAM. So if you don't attach that permission to your Airflow instance, Airflow will not able to do it and it will fail. So it doesn't mean that if someone gets the Airflow access also, then he or she can do everything in your account or everything what is required. No, it all again depends on what kind of permissions you administrators are also offering to Airflow to do. So Airflow is just like a mediator. So what permission you give to this mediator, that permission itself, it will allow to its end user to perform. So that's how it makes the secure from all the four options perspective. So that's about the security standpoints, I would say. Now, let's see from a CI CD standpoint, right? When it comes to this entire CI CD, I think I've covered up a lot. I mean, I've emphasized on this point before and also from a CI CD, how it is very important for us or how exactly it helps all of us, right? So most of the time, what happens is when you talk about moving away from one tool to another, people always in that dilemma is, first you're getting my platform changed for some good reason, obviously. Second, now you also getting the implication effect, or I would say post migration effect, that I have to not only change this tool but I have to change five other tools because the new tool cannot integrate with this five tools. That's exactly the big problem which I see while working in the industry. And that's correct, I would say. It depends on what kind of tool you're replacing it with, what other option. So it all depends on your choice. So there exactly you will see Airflow try to fits into all of those things, that it's not only help you to simplify or easily change or migrate from your existing system by providing those additional DevOps thing, right? Whatever the additional DevOps you need, it not only help you to simplify that perspective, but also it help you to simplify in terms of integrating with your existing system. What that means is, let's say if you have your pipeline, if you already have a CI/CD, which you're using something like Jenkins, Bamboo, GitLab CI, or any other AWS code build code pipeline, you can easily call or orchestrate the entire data pipeline in the Apache Airflow with help of APIs. You can write the APIs, REST API in the Python in the caller, run that caller in the Python in your existing pipeline, which can directly integrate with this Airflow instance, given that condition that you have this entire networking and the security and you have the permission to do that. If you have that, then it's all fine, and AWS, I mean your entire Airflow can take care of that thing. So that's the beauty about the Airflow, right? CI/CD standpoint. And not only that, with what exactly the additional thing AWS has done on CI/CD is versioning the S3 bucket. So versioning means is whatever we will see in the demo, right? In next few minutes, whatever we do as a demo standpoint, you store all of your code into S3. Airflow has made it, I mean, manage workflow for AWS has made it mandatory that it's only going to sync the code from the S3. Why exactly, or what's the advantage of doing that is, in S3 you can do the versioning. Version is like how we have the in the GitHub, right? In the code repository you can have different versions. Similar kind of versioning you can do for your DAG or other kind of scripts and plugin. Not only it help you to go back in the history or understand what got changed, but also if you someone incidentally deletes it, you can retrieve that version. So that's a beauty what AWS has given. A small feature, but it is really impactful when it comes to if something goes wrong. Second is, as I talk about in detail, flexible integration with your existing CI/CD pipeline. The third one is the DAG get automatically sync in 30 to 60 seconds. What that means is you will see in when you get demoing also on the live. I don't have to go and tell Airflow, hey Airflow, there is a new DAG which I've written. Can you please sync, right? It will automatically every 30 to 60 seconds based on that cycle, the scheduler will automatically go the folder which I define in S3 while provisioning the instance and try to see and hear, hey, is there any new DAG? Is there any new DAG? Whenever it see a new DAG, it will automatically sync that DAG into your Airflow instance. So you don't have to do it manually. And which how exactly that is very important is, let's say if you have a different team. When I say different team is one team who's more on the DevOps, the other team who's maybe let's say some machine learning or data engineers, they can still go and work without being like interacting a lot with DevOps team. Hey, I've written this. Can you sync it? Can you do this? Can you do that? Right? Just upload the code in that bucket and which is tied to your Airflow instance, and Airflow instance will automatically sync that thing. So that all is becomes very important in day to day, day in day out life, right? So that's more important about your day in. And the last thing is custom plugin Python dependency changes. So not only that, let's say for example, since it is very wide, I mean, the best part about Airflow is it has a strong community presence since it is open source. So many people have tried to write their custom plugins, Python dependencies, and other stuff, which also you can leverage to simplify your entire day in, day out operations, right? Not only just interacting with AWSs, with other clouds, or other kinds of things like Snowflake you talk about and all those things, it is very simpler to do with help of that community support. So that's how it makes this entire thing very easy to go. Now I think it's a time for us to go demo. I think more of the theory. So now what I will do is I will switch back to our AWS console and see where exactly our CloudFormation stack has been standing. So as we can see, this entire CloudFormation stack is completed. Let me see the events. I think it just got completed a minute back, right? Which is a perfect timing. We are good to go. So as I mentioned, this is going to deploy my Amazon, and let me bring you the resource view. Okay, give me 1 second. So yeah, this is a resource view, right? And if I drag a bit, so you can see it has just launched the VPCs and other thing. It has launched the S3 bucket, the environment, right? Apache Airflow instance, the IAM permissions, okay, and the entire VPC security, all the things which is required for networking. So all the VPC security groups, VPC security groups, IAM permissions, as well as the Airflow instance. What I will do next is I will try to open a new tab. I mean, copy this. Go to the output section, and you can see there is an URL here, right? I will click on this URL. Now, if you remember, I told you that, okay, this is how it will look like. So when it comes from an auth standpoint, this is I'm using the Airflow Manager. From an auth standpoint, it directly giving me the integration with my AWS management single sign-on. So by default, whatever the single sign-on I'm using for my AWS console, the AWS SSO, the same is what I can do. So I don't have to manage the additional of these overhead. So this is how the UI looks like for the AWS Airflow. Very clean, very simple, very elegant UI, right? You can see all the DAGs here. What exactly? This is the home screen, right? Where you can see all the DAGs, the data set, the security, right? The list of users, roles, what they are doing, permissions and all. You can also have all of the details. The admin, I mean, you can define the different roles, hierarchy of everything, the variables and all of the stuff, what you can do. And the documentations. This is what I was talking about, the REST APIs and other things. So this how the UI looks like. There are other things what you will also get when it comes of how to see the logs, the graph and other thing. But for that, what we have to do is we have to upload one's DAG. So what I'll do is I will go back to my AWS console. I'll open this entire the output, right? The resource thing, and I'll go to my S3 bucket. This is my S3 bucket, which is just deployed few minutes back as a part of my cloud formation. It's very important. One small setting which you have to do is whenever you deploy an Airflow, whether it's an open source or you're deploying as a your managed workflow, while deployment you are given that which folder Airflow needs to sync. In my case, I've given DAGs. So Airflow is not going to sync any random files from this S3 bucket. It's going to only sync which folder I've mentioned. So in my case, I've mentioned as DAG. So I have to make sure that my entire thing is in the DAG folder. It's not going to go and just play around with any of the folders, right? So what I've done is I've just created a folder DAG. Next, I will go and click on the upload and add a simple file called this tutorial.py. This is a sample code given by Airflow itself to understand, right? Like an hello world kind of a thing, I would say. So under DAGs, I've uploaded tutorial.py. This tutorial.py is the DAG which is written in Python. And we will see in like few minutes. So this is how the AWS, what we have to do. Now I will again go back to our Apache Airflow window. And we will try to refresh this entire screen. So as I mentioned in my explanation also in the presentation, it takes 30 to 60 seconds. Close to 60 seconds, you will see the entire DAG will be up and running there. In the meantime, I've also shared my GitHub repository with Vishwa, so he will put it in the comment where I'm using, I've stored all of my codes and what I'm leveraging here. So we'll wait for like few minutes, I would say roughly a minute or so for the DAG to get populated here. And in meantime, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer them.
Yes, I think now there should be more questions, people. Come on. Because I know this isn't kind of a complex topic. It won't get inside that understanding vicinity of like that CI/CD very easily. I think we should wait for some time now. It's not easy to understand Airflow at one go. And thanks for making such a great work. You're made sure that everybody understands in a flow. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. All
So
right.
yeah, no worries. I think if we don't have a question, I will go back to the demo, right? And we can see automatically when I refresh it, the tutorial got synced. I haven't done anything. I just uploaded my DAG into S3 bucket in that folder. And you will see the this entire Airflow. I won't say AWS, but Airflow is automatically sync that DAG from that flow. Now, what you can do is you can open this DAG and you can play around it, right? You can get the graph view. These are the different views to understand the visual interpretation of your DAG file, right? The graph view, what exactly is doing and all that stuff, right? So what we're doing is print date, sleep, template, right? It's small hello world, I would say. This is a button to say play or start the execution. So I'll go ahead and trigger the DAG. This is called as a manual way. You not only can do it what I'm doing it manually, obviously you can do it manually as well as you can also schedule it. Let's say you want to run some actions at 1 a.m. at the night. No one is going to set 1 a.m. and do it, right? You need some more intelligent way. So those kinds of scheduling is also you can do. So you can see it's queued and other stuff. It's an auto refresh, and there are different kinds of here legends you can see, right? If it is failed, up for retry, reschedule, success, running, and those kinds of stuff, right? The dark green says it's success, and if you see this is the success, and you can see the metadata for each of this, what it was, what's the task ID, when it started, what's the status, and all this stuff, without for me going into any other place, nor I have to go inside this machine or I get the logs or anything. From the UI itself, I can get to know what happened. And if you want to still, let's say I want to get the logs for understanding, so you can click off any of the actions, and this is how the logs looks like in the detailed behind the scene, what it does, what command it executed, maybe what output it is getting, It marks success and everything. So this is how like it is the Hello World demo look like here, right? What I'll do next is I'll quickly try to give a complex example as a second demo. In that second demo, what I'm going to do is there is a DynamoDB in AWS, which is called as a NoSQL database. I'll deploy that NoSQL database. I will deploy a glue job and it will take the data out from DynamoDB with help of glue job, put it into S3 and have a serverless way, which is serverless warehouse called as Athena, and Athena to query that outcome. So exporting the data out from DynamoDB to S3 and then have an Athena to query the data, which is on the S3. So you get the feel of how exactly in enterprise way also this pipeline can work and how simple it is to do. So for that, again, we have to go back to our AWS console. And before we go to the AWS console, I have to go and make a small change into our S3 bucket. So I will go in this S3 bucket, which is what we deployed. What we have to do here is I have to upload my code, right? The code which I have to use in terms of playing around with, not playing around, I would say the code which I have to do in terms of my entire exercise, the glue code, right? I need the glue code to play around with my, or to run the ETL job to export the data from S3 to from DynamoDB to S3. So what I'll do is I click on upload, add folder, and from that folder standpoint, I'll take this glue code, which is the same, is in my GitHub repository, the same folder. I will say upload and upload. Why I'm doing this job before, I'm doing this task before even launching CloudFormation, because in the CloudFormation, when I will deploy the glue job, I have said in the glue job, please go and refer this particular thing. And then next I will copy this S3 bucket because I have to define the location. Let's get back to our CloudFormation and launch up one more stack. The whole idea of leveraging the CloudFormation is to focus more on our demo part, and rather than really getting into this wiring manual play around and all, I want to really give you the feel of how exactly you will work as a day in day out in industry as a developer. Not as, obviously when you're playing, you want to play around with Airflow and all, you can do all this manually, but I want to give you the real sense of how things will work and focus on the fundamental thing which will help you to learn. I'm giving this Airflow job as a name. In the S3 bucket, this S3 bucket is required in terms of the location where I have my glue job, the ETL job for exporting the data out, which is this location. Then I'm giving my DynamoDB table name and other configurations, and I will go say next. Next. So it will launch. Again, it's not going to take 20 minutes. Obviously, this is going to be very fast and it's going to work seamlessly. You will see like in few minutes, you will have this up and running. And in meantime, what I'll do is I will answer. There is one question which we have in the question. I can see in the chat, there is one question what we have. How is Apache Airflow different from Glue workflow, from Satish? A very good question. And I can see that Satish, you do have good knowledge of AWS for asking this question. So, okay, when it comes to Apache Airflow or Glue workflow also can, I would say to a certain extent, works in a similar fashion how Apache Airflow works. Now, in case of Glue workflow, where the differentiator comes is Apache Airflow is not just limited to Glue. When I say Glue is, or other way around, is just limited to ETL. It can do broad other things. Think of like you have some machine learning pipeline. Think of something you want to do in the Python, which you don't want to do on AWS Glue itself. You want to use some open source way of doing, maybe Panda library, something. Or think of something you want to do outside AWS. There exactly Apache Airflow is much, much more larger and sophisticated, where Glue is much simplified and cloud native, I would say. If you want to do such kinds of serverless, you're very sure that your use case is the data pipeline and you want to be with the cloud native, then Glue workflow comes into as a survival, where it is very restricted to play in and out in a very simplified way with AWS Glue services. So that's a differentiator between Apache Airflow and the Glue workflow, where Apache Airflow can allow you to integrate with other services like SageMaker, EMR, not on AWS, even outside AWS. And Glue is very restricted only for the Glue workflow, where you can play around with Glue and other kind of thing. So that's a big differentiator when it comes to Apache workflow and the Glue. And the second thing, even the DAG standpoint. In the workflow, you have the UIs, you do have the UI and other thing. But in case of your, when you talk about Apache Airflow, it's a sort of, I would say, still a more cloud agnostic way of also writing the DAG. But yeah, an interesting question, I would say. So if you have any other questions, please put in the chat. And in meantime, we can see our entire job has been successful here. So please follow it very carefully what I'm going to do next. So the next thing what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in DynamoDB now, which is our database, and I will add some records to that DynamoDB. So I'll go to the table. This is a table which I just launched, test table, actions. One second. Create item. And I will just say, I will add 2-3 records to it. Okay, so there are 2 records which I have added. I will try to. Okay. There are one more record I will add. Let's say hello world. And for demo, I'm just making it. In actual world, you can make this more complex. You can add more records, more columns, more number of rows and all. So we'll have 2 records, hello world and Sanchit Jain. Okay. So my DynamoDB is populated. Now I will make the changes in my Amazon S3 bucket. The bucket where we have this entire the kind of this DAG and all those things stored, right? So this is a bucket where we have the DAG and everything stored. What we have to do is, as I mentioned, 2 things what we have to do. We have to upload the DAG and we have to also upload the requirement pipeline, requirement.txt. So what is the requirement.txt before I upload the DAG? So requirement.txt is the kind of additional libraries, any programming language which you write, whether it's Python, Java, .NET, you need to upload the additional libraries, right? That libraries will allow you to work around with it. Similarly, for AWS or to workflow, I mean, for Apache Airflow to work with AWS, you have to provide the AWS SDK or library. So that is what is called as a requirement.txt. I think the people who knows Python, that's similarly what we do, right? So requirement.txt, you have to upload in this entire, and you can see Apache Airflow backport provider Amazon. So this is what you have to upload in this entire, the same in the DAG folder. Before we really go and upload the DAG in this folder and it gets synced in the Airflow, what we have to do is we have to provide all the properties required, right, for the DAG to work. So what happens is, whenever, it's a very important thing to observe here, whenever the DAG is imported in Airflow, the compilation of the DAG is already been done. Okay, I will repeat. Whenever the Airflow imports the DAG, the compilation, it already compiles. It don't execute, but it compiles the DAG. It checks for syntax error. And if everything is good, then only it's going to upload. So make sure you provide all of the dependencies in advance for the DAG, which includes plugging, any sorts of variable, before you import the DAG. So what we have to do is so that's what you saw. I provided the plugins. So it gets synced in the Airflow. Now I will provide the variables because I need to provide the variables for my job to run before I upload my DAG. So for the variables also, it's very simple. You can store such kinds of an JSON and automatically you can import this such kinds of the value here. And I will make quick changes which is required for, and again, this is not something standard, this is required or the need for my application to work, which will be different in your case also. So what it is just saying is, what are these three variables? One is the AWS region where I'm going to work. The second is the S3 bucket. Obviously, you know by now what S3 bucket we are leveraging. The third important thing what I'm using here is the Glue database. So as I said, the Glue database, the Glue DynamoDB table is what we're going to export in Athena, and the Athena tables will be created with the help of the Glue DB. So this is the Glue DB what we have deployed with the CloudFormation, and I'll click save. So I've updated the Glue DB, which we launched by the CloudFormation just now, the second stack, the S3 bucket, and the region, and I'll click save. So this has got saved. So now I've given my requirement.txt, the provider, I've given my variable. Now it's the time to sync our DAG. The process is going to be the same. The process is exact the same. We will go to the S3 bucket, under the DAGs folder, click on upload, add file, and what we are going to do is just table export. And upload. So now this table export is done, requirement.txt and tutorial. These are the three files. The tutorial was the first one. Requirements are for the providers, and this is for the DAG file for the new one. And now we will go back to our Airflow and we'll wait for few seconds for it to get sync here. And once you will sync, you will automatically see the second one. Until that time, if you see any of the questions we have in the chat, so I think there are no questions here. So let me go back to the demo quickly.
One second. The recorded session will be available on demand on our channel, so you guys can go and check that out on our channel. So you need not have to worry about the recording. Recordings will be given to you through the mail as well. So don't worry about that. Yeah, I think Sanchit, you can continue.
Okay, so now I'll go and share this tab, and you can see the DynamoDB export is automatically sync. So this is good. You can see the owner, you can see the Airflow. This is all the metadata what you can configure. The interesting part now, the show time, right? Before we go and play around with it, I will do the same thing. Let me give you some idea about what we are doing here. So DynamoDB export, add new partition, update latest view. So this is what you can see we are doing in the Glue operator. So if you see in the operator section, we are targeting the AWS Glue service. In the operator, you can see we are targeting AWS Athena service and operator Athena services. So in case also, if you're very new, you have no idea what's happening in the DAG, or if your other colleague has written, this is how also you can interpret from the UI what is the details what you're doing. And what we'll do next is we'll try to go run this. So it will go in the same sequence, one after the another. It will be in the running sequence. Currently, it should be queued. It failed. One second, let me check why it failed. Okay, it's saying concurrent execution. One second. Concurrent execution means there is there's instance which has already been running. So don't worry, when you get this concurrent execution, the only thing you always have to learn is to troubleshoot. So if you saw, you would have panicked. Okay, my demo got failed, right? No. But if you see it properly and if you try to click on it, go to logs, you will see the errors are very clear to understand what was happening, right? So as I click on it log, I see, okay, the pipeline is running. Incidentally, I clicked twice to run. That's why the pipeline was already running and taking place of it. So if you can see here, this was my failed instance which was running, but the second one is started running where it is currently doing the glue job, which is an AWS ETL job, serverless ETL, which is running this entire thing. It will take, I would say, less than a minute to take that job, run this, and have the pipeline in ready. And then we will validate how exactly it performed, right? Which is while we'll go to the Athena and we will query the Athena service. I'll switch and see if there is any questions in the meantime. And again, you can keep this auto refresh or other thing based on however you want to sync, right? Many times I request people not to keep this auto refresh. If you have like a large machine learning kind of a pipeline, which is going to take hours, obviously, right? So in that case, you want to avoid that network traffic. What any refresh is what it's firing an API call and getting. Again, you're not going to charge for it, but performance, right? It might impact when you have this across the multiple developer kind of a multi-development environment kind of thing. All those small things helps you in terms of optimizing the performance. So we can see automatically it's refresh. It finished this task one. It's currently with the Athena. And how you will see how you're understanding, right? So you can see this green legend here, right? Which is in this one. So the second task is also done, which is for the Athena operator. And the third one is currently going on. Once this pipeline is successful, then I'll show you the logs and then we will move to the Athena console, which will be the last part of our demo. So currently it's working with the Athena operator view. So we can see here, this is also done. And if I refresh here and refresh this UI, the pipeline is successfully completed. I'll click on this again. And here you can see the different options, right? The task label, what you want to do, another thing. If you want to get the entire logs, then click on the logs, how we have done the troubleshooting in case of the failure in the previous thing, right? Yeah, what we got at a troubleshooting error. Similarly, here also you can do the troubleshooting, or I mean, not troubleshooting, you can get the visibility of what and how it executed for the successful one. So this is how it just ran the task, it finished the task, it just moved to the DynamoDB, second one, and the other stuff. Now, the important thing is to go back and validate how exactly or was this even successful. So for that, if you remember in the DynamoDB, I've added two records. The record one was Sanchit Jain and the second one was Hello World. So I will switch it back to the AWS console and go to a service called as Amazon Athena. Amazon Athena is a serverless warehouse. And what I will do is in this serverless warehouse, I will change the database to this database. This is the same database which I gave in the variable section. I told you, right? Under this database is what I'm going to write the records which are exported from the DynamoDB. So this is my database. This is my table. And the demo will be successful if I see two records when I run this query. And here you go. When I run the query, which is just a select star from this database dot table, I should get the two records. The two records are Sanchit Jain and Hello World, which is what we got from the DynamoDB. So that's how you can write more complex. Again, I would say this demo is also very simple. You can write more complex, such as like training the machine learning pipeline, doing very heavy lifting, terabytes or gigabytes of data processing. Those all kinds of things what you can do with help of Airflow in a very simple and easy way. So that's what's more from the demo perspective. I would just share a couple of quick things and recap the demo, and then we will wrap up and go towards the questionnaire part of it. So three things what we have done: create an environment with the first cloud formation, copy the tags and plugins in the S3 bucket, and access the UI on a high level. The key concept are directed acyclic graph, all this Python codes which I upload for creating the graph workflow, the unit of task in each workflow, like the Athena operator, the glue operators, right? Those things. And the workflow, as we know, DAG, operator, and task. And task is nothing like things like export, right? The query or the API to fire to extract the data out from DynamoDB, or maybe to write it to S3. Those are called as a task. And if you want to really deep dive and understand and get the best out of how exactly or what are the features provided by Amazon Workflow or the local runner, right? Which is since it's an open source, these are the additional resources you can get once you have the presentation. I will upload the presentation also in the same repo. The link is already shared by the Vishwas in the chat. I'll upload the presentation also in the GitHub repo. You can refer this resources link to get much more detailed, to make it to leverage for your complex business requirement, to make it more secured and more scalable. So that's what I have from today's session, and I'm open for any questions what you have for now.
So, hey folks, it's time for you to ask some questions. And if you have any queries, don't worry about it. You can reach out to Sanchit even on LinkedIn. So, he's very active on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
So, Divya Sahu, are we going to discuss what's written in Python code? Just a simple demo? Yeah, I think Sanchit, if you can take this up,
Sure.
just
Give me 1 second. It's a good question. Let me do one thing. If you can bring up my screen. So this is the GitHub repo link, which is shared by Vishwas, right? What I will do is, so these are the two of my cloud formation templates. This first template is for launching the third one. I mean, this first template is for launching the Airflow instance, right? The Airflow instance, which I deployed. This is going to take you to 20 minutes. The second one is the job, right? Which is we have written. I will park this for now. First I want to give you a deep dive what exactly we are doing in the DAG. So if I go and open this tutorial DAG, which was like in Hello World, this is how you write any Python code. This is the same thing. You import what you want to do, right? As a library is what we generally do as a Python. This is like a metadata about the pipeline. Like if you see who's the owner, what time and all. This is the important thing, which is what it starts from with the DAG, where you define what you want to do as a DAG, the operators. If you remember in the glue operator, we have defined glue and Athena, like what each operator or each thing should do, and any sorts of documentations or other thing what you need to have. This is more like a standard thing what you can do. Let me get to the one which was very interesting, the DynamoDB export. So I'll try to make it very simple here, right? So that is more like a standard, which is, since it is given by Apache Airflow, it has other practices of documentation. All those are very important, but let me explain you the core of it. The demo one, right? The same thing what I mentioned. This is a library what we have used. This is the metadata. This exactly your starts the entire Python code, where I'm giving the configurations, region which I need to access, the S3 bucket, glue DB, and tables. If you remember, this is exact the things. These are the three parameters is what I passed from my UI as a JSON file, where I was making the changes in the region, the S3 bucket, and the glue, which is given like a config region. So it's a JSON format. It's reading that and giving to this variables. And this is what my DynamoDB table is. So this initialize my variables. This is where I go to the plugin format around it. So whenever whenever the Airflow gets operated, then this is where you see the things, right? This is what I'm executing as a glue operator, and I'm defining my DAGs as, this is what I want to do with my DAG. DAG is the entire workflow. What is my pipeline looks like, right? Sorry. Like what's a pipeline name, the arguments, what are giving description, if you want to schedule it, right? Or if you want to give the parameters to it, those kinds of things what you can do here. The same thing what we have given the parameters and other stuff, it's taking care of it. So this is like a DAG which is on the pipeline level. Now we will go on the individual task level, right? The first, if you see on that, if you see in the pipeline, there were three tasks: the export, update, add new partition, and update the view. So this is the task one, task two, and task three. So in the task one, what we are doing is we are doing some operation, which is nothing but executing the particular glue job. The task 2 is we are altering and adding the Athena query on that location. Like we are creating a new partition. And the task 3 is we are creating and replacing the view. And this is what the flow. This is how flow looks like DynamoDB to S3 to export, add new partition, and update latest view. This is the very simple, very familiar. If you are coming from a Python background, is do it. I would also leave it. I will try to see, but many other contributors I've seen, what they have done is they've tried to again build a very UI on top of this DAG also. So if you don't know Python and still you are very keen to use Airflow, they've tried to simplify that by giving an UI on top of it. That with the UI you can generate this DAG. But this is how the DAG look like. The operation we have done both for the hello world as well as for this. And now if I go back to this job.template, the second cloud formation what we have launched, now you will be able to correlate with this. DynamoDB, which is our database for export, where we have the data and will export. The glue database, which we saw right when I was giving the Athena out to example to you. The table, the test table, the IAM permission rule, which is required by glue job to execute. And the last and the important one is the glue job, which is going to export the data from DynamoDB to S3, where I'm giving this location that, okay, execute from the bucket which I've given to you from this folder and this file. So this is all the codes what I have leveraged for the demo, the Airflow instance, the job. This is my glue code. Again, you can use this. This is like the simple glue code you can think of for executing. Whenever this code got executed, it took the data out and put it into, flush it into S3 folder. So that's the code what I leverage for the demo. I hope that answers your question, Divya.
Yes, I think even Mahesh also was asking the same thing. Can we view the code that we have used for the DAX and as well as DAX in Python? Yes, I think he explained everything here. And of course, Tarun Marwa, still a niche topic, but good insights that could be used in data pipeline. Yes, Airflow is a very big tool in data pipelines as well. So it can be leveraged as whatever the thing you want. It can be used as a pipeline, it can be used as a delivery, anything that you just say about the potential of what an SDLC requires in any field. I think Airflow has it. Thank you so much, Sanchit, for being the speaker today, and it was nice hosting you. And I think this is a very niche timing, but if people joined because of the Airflow as one of the topics that we have picked up, and it was very nice and an insightful session and very good amount of demos. I would love to actually bring out some more use cases with respect to Devtron, and we can start working out with respect to CI/CD and other use cases as well. Thank you so much, Sanchit.
My pleasure. Welcome.
Sure, folks. A last bit of my work. It's just to educate you in terms of the right DevOps and actually the right amount of software development and the education that we are actually bringing on the table with respect to community efforts. So, subscribe to our channel, and also do look back at our GitHub repository. Our entire product is out there in the market, which is there available for you. We're looking for meaningful adoptions as well, so do try us out, do check the GitHub repository, and do reach back to me if you have any queries and questions. And this is the link for the docs. And that's it from my side, folks. This is Vishwas Nayak signing off. And I think that's the end of the show. Thank you so much, my friends. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for hosting me today, Devtron community, and I look forward for more such engagement from you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, folks. Bye.
Bye bye.